Hello, this is Dan Nowman, Niswander, and you are watching and listening to the Nowman Show. And it's my pleasure to join me today, an incredible musician with an incredible story. And we have a lot of details to get into. So let's jump right in here. This is Julian Shaw Taylor.
That's correct. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mr. Nowman.
Oh, my pleasure. How are you today?
I'm well. I've just returned from the gym, which was a bit of a shock to the system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I need to do some of that probably when we finish here, some exercise. So we met probably what, 6 years ago,
6 or 7.
something
It
like
was it
that,
was a
seven
while.
years ago.
Mhm.
It's been a while.
I think it was for the 404 Not Found album. We did a talk, didn't we?
And that was as the Singularity,
The Singularity. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's right.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that. I mean, how you've evolved with that project.
I did well. I had that radio hit that was number 12 on college radio, and a song called Wetter from that album. And then I got myself a new manager about beginning of 2020, before all the shutdown and everything, who used to manage Guns N' Roses.
Oh,
Her name
wow.
Vicky Hamilton. And she told me, "Oh, I went on Spotify trying to find your music, and there are 12 the singularities, and they're all EDM music, electronic stuff."
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I mean, it ties in, I guess. It's kind of a futurist idea. Some of the singularities related to futurism, which is AI and the development of AI, and the exponential shift in human consciousness that occurs when computers are able to perform all the tasks we can perform. Anyway, that was the singularity. And she just says, you just have to go under your own name, because otherwise people will get confused. Every time I do a remix, and it's a singularity remix, it could be confused with one of these guys, and they'll get credit for what I do, and people who are anticipating their style of music will be disappointed with what I do. So I understand the thing, because my work is in many different areas, and when I do a remix, it isn't EDM, it isn't electronic. It's there's a lot more to it than that. So that's the wrong way of phrasing that, maybe, but so I understood, but unfortunately, obviously, I'd built up that brand for a while. Now I'm just me. Can't hide behind any of it. Can't pretend.
Right. Exactly. At some point, you might as well be transparent and just be who you are.
Exactly.
And so I can certainly identify with that. It's a much better place to be, unless you happen to have a band or something of that nature, or a like a, what do they call it with writers like Mark Twain? You just have another name. I can't. There's another term for it.
Pen name or nom
Pen
de
name,
plume. Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's better to be transparent. If you don't have one of those scenarios going on.
And
Um,
also, it means that you have to commit to an emotional style of writing. I mean, from your own perspective. It's like Damon Albarn, for example, of Blur. His solo records are very much him. They are not the Gorillaz, and they're not Blur.
mhm.
And so he has to commit to that. And even though he's done some pretty odd albums that are historically based, he's also done some which are very, very personal. And certainly this new album, Elysium, is very personal. So it being under my name makes a lot of sense.
So when you say no, how do you spell the name of the album?
Elysium, Elysium.
And I've heard that word before. I'm trying to recall.
It is a Greek word. The Elysian fields, I
Ah,
believe, were the fields of the gods, the beautiful verdant pastures of the afterlife. I believe. I'm not 100% on that, because it's not named for Greek mythology. It's named for a specific venue in Austin, actually.
oh, really?
Yes.
So tell us the story about that. How does that tie into your album title?
Well, I met the lady, the muse in question that I wrote the album about at Elysium, the venue. And because of the connotation that it has with Greek mythology, I mean, my first solo record was called Cogito Ergo Sum, which is Latin. So I just thought, having some Greek mythology ties into that general. In fact, that makes sense because my only other solo record was in Latin and this one is in Greek.
Oh, wow.
So I guess that makes sense. You just made me think of that, Dan.
Yeah, there's going to be tie-ins like that when you make albums. I mean, that's happened to me where I'll do certain things, even though album projects are completely different in most ways. There's certain similar things that kind of sometimes carry over. Artists tend to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you write, I mean, I believe, I mean, this is just in retrospect and the realization of having this conversation, I used the singularity nomenclature to bring in pieces of music that weren't necessarily from my own heart perspective. Maybe they were written, with the usefulness of a nom de plume, if you will. And the ones that I've written under my own name, as I say, this is probably my 17th full-length album, but wow, my second under my own name, or third under my own name, strictly speaking. It is definitely the most personal record from the heart that I've ever done. I mean, all the songs pertain very specifically to emotional states and developments in the relationship I have with my muse, the one I met in Elysium. So
it was every song is about a relationship with this person
at
the muse. On this muse at the Elysium, I should say.
Yes. I mean, they're not all situated at Elysium, the venue, but obviously that's where we met. So it made sense to me that, because I wrote a song about this person, having not really, connected with them at this point. And then I like to say I cast magic spells. I mean, if you believe the Alan Moore perspective on magic, spells are literally words strung together. I mean, you spell a word and then you incant or intone a spell to create magic in the world, which is to either, bring somebody towards you or push somebody away or punish somebody. And it generally is through the use of words. So I feel very committed to the idea that there was magic in that intention and that moment. And so most of the things I do now have a consciousness with what I am putting out into the world, because people listen to the music, as you know, Dan, and they will respond with great depth to something that you may have considered throwaway in your own material.
Right.
But you can't be irresponsible in that sense sometimes. It's like if you write a song that has negativity imbuing the song, sometimes that negativity can feed somebody's personal negativity, such as, how Helter Skelter or Piggies by the Beatles
right
engendered all of that Charlie Manson stuff. And even though there was never a sense from George Harrison or Paul McCartney that that's what they would do, that is what happened. And it was contained within the magic that they had created. And that's a responsibility that people have.
That's true. That's very true, as a matter of fact. And it can make such a great impact that it really wasn't until maybe the last 5 years or so that Paul decided, because the rest of the band, his band said, include Helter Skelter. You got to do Helter Skelter. And like he had reservations all those years until maybe about 5 years ago, or whatever that was.
And it's a great song, and it doesn't pertain to violence. I mean, it was somebody's interpretation of it. But
it was about a slide.
Right, exactly.
A slide called the Helter Skelter. Nothing to do with anything like that. So yeah, it is important that you just never know what a song the impact of what it can make, positively or negatively.
But there was intention for that song to be chaotic. I mean, Paul McCartney says he wrote it with an intention for that sort of the Who level chaos.
Right.
I mean, it was the Who that inspired him, right? It was I Can See for Miles, if I understand it correctly. Yeah. He liked that kind of chaotic, loud, brash, noisy thing, and wanted to do his own version. And that translated incredibly well. But what it did was it created this chaos, and the chaos went into the mind of an unfortunately highly unstable man, who then extrapolated it into literal murder. And, I mean, I'm not equating myself, of course, with the level of the Beatles or anything like that. That would be disingenuous and silly of me. But that's why when I write something now, I tend to kind of try and interpret what it is I'm really trying to do with the song. Like, am I trying to bring more positivity and love into the world, or am I trying to be self-eviscerating, or what is it? And now I think very hard about that stuff. And this album, I'm very proud of it lyrically and emotionally, because I feel like I've achieved for once in my career, because this is the album of my career, in my opinion.
Oh, wow. So since you said it's the album of your career and the most personal album that you ever did, would you say it's the most transparent album that you ever did?
Mm-hmm. Most definitely, yeah. I mean, there's no equivocation in it. You can see what's happening from song to song. Like, as they develop, you can see the emotional states as little bubbles of how it develops. Like, I mean, it's not all positive. It's not all love and light and wonderfulness. It is a growth. And I appreciate the fact that, you know, through the growth of the relationship, those different nuanced emotional states became part of the narrative. And so it is a narrative album. It's not a concept album necessarily, but there is a concept behind it.
Right.
I don't want to be like, you know, Roger Waters and be all that one thing, because although having seen him the other day, I thought he was magnificent and really appreciated.
Yeah, I've heard reviews, seen pictures, and I was hoping to have gone myself, but it just didn't work out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Roger Waters and Pink Floyd, and have been for a long time. Now each of your songs, you say, is a narrative. So would you say it's a poetic style in talking about a variety of different subjects in your life?
No, it's all very much focused on the development of this one relationship.
Everything is about that.
Yes, the narrative is contained in the song cycle, not in the individual songs, although there are narrative elements, like recitative elements to the songs, which carry the narrative along. But each song sort of encapsulates one specific thing. And I've never really done that before, because I've never had an overarching concept for a record before. And I've always just selected which are the best songs. And this one, I sent it out to a bunch of my friends, David J from Bauhaus included, who plays on the record. And I wanted their opinion on which songs worked in which contexts and all that stuff. And I got a lot of differing opinions. So there are about another 6-7 songs that I left off this album, which are going to be following up. I mean, I've recorded a song with Carmine from Bowie's band, and Alan from Morrissey's band, and Chris from the drummer from Berlin. And it's a re-record of an old song. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take the songs I did with David and Carmine and MGT, who is a guitar player, played with Tricky and Peter Murphy and all those guys. I'll probably put them together in a second follow-up album that's going to be like the rest of the narrative, with extra tracks that have special guests on them, basically. So that's going to be that record, because I have so much material that I have finished lying on my hard drives. I felt committed to put out 12 songs that fit this tight circle narrative. I wanted that for Elysium. But there's a lot of extra stuff as well. So there will be a follow-up within a year.
Within a year? Oh, great.
It's done. So it just needs to. As I say, I sent out a 17-song cycle, and we whittled it down to 12. There were some consistencies in what the songs to keep were, but there were no consistencies with which songs to jettison. So,
oh wow.
I mean, there were some people who really liked the romantic beautiful songs and that's what they went towards. And then there are some people who like the angry songs and went towards that. And there were some people that liked the sad song. So it wasn't useful to get such a wide range of opinions in the set. I mean, it was wonderful and I appreciate all of the opinions, but it didn't help me with the selection process much.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think that when putting an album together, you just have a good feeling about how it should come together. I mean, that's one thing that I like about the creative process is that it does, when paying attention, I think the steps reveal themselves very clearly. Okay, this is the first one, this is the next one, and it happens in all phases, right? Recording and writing and producing and editing and yeah, that's what I've always discovered. The creative process, just let it happen, let it
I mean,
be, you know.
My trouble is I record every day, so I have a lot of extraneous music that doesn't fit together very well, because, you know, one day I'll be listening to Queens of the Stone Age and I'll write songs that sounds like that and has the urgency of a Queens of the Stone Age, and then the next day I'll listen to some Cocteau Twins and that will have some airy, beautiful shoegazy elements, and they won't fit on the record together. There's no way. So I have to sort of like cut down the middle and just say, does this want to be a very diverse record, which touches on each part of what I do, or is it going to be a consistent record that has a consistent spinal narrative? And I think this one kind of is more that, although there are songs that are heavy and fast.
Really?
And there are songs which are gentle and loving. And, you know, one of the things that really helped me write the record, I worked a lot with David J over the just before the pandemic and during the pandemic. David J is the bass player from Bauhaus and Love and Rockets, and he left his guitar and his bass guitar, the black Fender P that he uses with Bauhaus, at my house, at my studio, and I just couldn't leave it just lying there. So I got the bass, and that instrument, because it's a magical instrument. I mean, that's Bauhaus is one of those bands that you either get it or you don't. And if you get it, it is a spectacularly important band. There is a lot of power in their music. And that bass, being on the stage, playing those songs, and those, you know, the people that he's played for. He played on one of the songs on the record and a lot of other songs that I've done that aren't out yet. But I played his bass on about 3 more of the songs on the record too, because it felt like a magical connection, you know, and his acoustic guitar as well, which is a beautiful, beautiful, no name Spanish classical, but it's gorgeous. It sounds like Leonard Cohen's Spanish classical. So I used that.
Really?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring some of that magic in, and you know, although there aren't that many special guests on the album, I felt like that instrument was a special guest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's really about the music anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the fame and the celebrity and all that kind of stuff, or I mean, it has its place, obviously, and you know, from a marketing standpoint, I understand that. But really, it does come down to the music and what you're hearing and what you're experiencing.
Well, this is true. But I mean, I love collaborating with people, and I very rarely get the opportunity to. I mean, I work so much. I remix a lot, and I produce other people's music, and I do writing sessions with people. But the opportunity for somebody of such great stature in the world where I inhabit to come and join me, because all the ones that I've worked with, you know, Bowie's guy, Bauhaus, Morrissey, like these people are all people in my context, and the fact that they will come in and work with me, it's a great honor. I'm not putting them on the record to, you know, to say, hey, I got this dude on my record. It is an honor to have their input, and especially with David, because I like him a lot. He's a very entertaining, like brilliant raconteur, smart guy, British. So, you know, there's a lot of connection there as well. But, you know, as I say, there's a lot of stuff I haven't released that we've done together because it doesn't fit this album.
Yeah. Well, that, and in time you'll release it, I'm sure, in
Well,
some.
his next album, he tells me, is going to be, the first side is going to be the songs we've done together.
Oh, really? Wow.
Not with me vocalizing, with his vocals. So they're his songs that I produced and played the majority of the instruments on. So so that's good. I'm looking forward to that.
Wow, it's a solo album.
It's David J's solo record, yeah.
And does he still do Love and Rockets too, or is that?
I don't. I imagine. Well, Bauhaus just split up.
Oh, they did.
Yeah. So I maybe, let's hope. Fingers crossed for a Love and Rockets reunion, huh?
Yeah, because they just played Pasadena, right? A Pasadena huge 80s festival at the Rose Bowl.
The Cruel World Festival.
Cruel World, yeah. And
Myself,
they broke up since then.
Yeah, they broke up.
Oh, wow.
My muse and I went to that show, actually. It was spectacularly good. Bauhaus ruled the night. And Morrissey was really good too. Because Alan, who's my friend, is also in Morrissey's band, that was heartfelt for me because they were playing a lot of Alan's songs, which I don't know whether they would have, necessarily gone for that set list if it hadn't been Alan playing. So for me, that was a great thrill. And it's wonderful to see when you see your friends up on stage and it's this huge, stage in front of however many thousands of people that is. It's a real thrill. I find that very heartening.
Yeah, it is exciting. I've had a chance to do it a few times in my life.
With Mike Garson, for example.
Yeah. Mike is an incredible musician, just no doubt about it. And I really love his honesty too. His genuineness and caring.
Right.
So it's that's why I think when we resonated because of now,
right.
The concept of now is how we connect it, basically, I think.
The power of now, you might say.
The power of now, yes. Yeah, exactly. Live in the moment,
Exactly.
Now you also do tribute bands too, and you do tributes.
That's
so
correct.
I know that originally when we first met, you had a project called The Band Who Fell to Earth.
The Band That Fell to Earth.
The Band That Fell to Earth, which is kind of a takeoff on the David Bowie movie, The Man Who Fell from Earth.
To Earth.
Fell to Earth, yeah, I know. So are you still doing that project, or do you do that as a solo?
Yes, we have a bunch of shows coming up in December, actually. I've been doing it as a solo thing a lot. I've been doing live streams of David Bowie songs, acoustically, request-based, and that's been going very, very well. I also open for the Depeche Mode band when we're on tour. And incidentally, as we're speaking about Mike Garson, I performed with Mike and the whole band only in soundcheck for a select group of people at the Rose in Pasadena just before the pandemic. Again, that was a great thrill. It was Jerry Leonard, Kevin Armstrong, who's also a friend, Carmine, who is a friend.
Carmine was there, yeah.
Alan Childs, who's the drummer, who was on the tour with Carmine, Joe Sumner, Sting's son, and Corey Glover actually was involved. Although I saw him there, but I didn't perform with him because he was, he's the singer. So, but that was great. I mean, it was a real wonderful opportunity, and I'm sorry that nobody was there. Somebody filmed it, like this with their phone, and it's a bad recording and all that stuff, but it's evidence, but it's right. Not a great recommendation. I mean, if I were ever offered the chance to go with the Bowie celebration and perform, I would of course jump on it with both feet. But I feel like an actual Bowie tribute doing that is not what they're aiming at. So fair enough.
Right, they're trying to just be a tribute, literally, as the title says, Bowie celebration. They're celebrating his life, and I've seen, I think, every single one. Well, every single one that's live, I've seen. Right. And I saw one they did on the internet. But
Duran Duran and
Duran Duran was the last 2 years.
9 Inch Nails as well.
9 Inch Nails, yeah. Trent Reznor. And the live show in 2016 was probably my favorite one. Sting was there as well,
Oh,
And
I saw that was wonderful. That was what was that? He did Black Star, didn't he? And it was
Black Star and also Lazarus as well,
yeah,
both of them.
no, he was spectacular. I was very surprised actually because I like Sting. I wasn't expecting him to be so ridiculously good.
Oh, I know. I literally I was in the VIP section and sitting close to his family. And when Sting came on stage, I most of the time I was sitting because I didn't want to stand up in front of other people. I just thought that was rude,
Mhm.
you know. But when Sting played, I just literally had to stand up like, wow. And I literally like went, wow,
Yeah.
you know, it
Oh
was
yeah.
incredibly good. Just
I mean, he's one of the best in the world, isn't he? I mean, we just have to accept
mhm.
Sting. Sting is king.
And I did want to talk to you a little bit about the industry before we break away. And first of all, how can people find out more about um, your music, how to find you, how to get the new record?
JulianShah-Tayler.com. I'll give you all that stuff. It will be released on BandCamp. It's actually by accident. It's already available on BandCamp. I didn't realize when you upload it, even if you put a release date, it's available. But people have been buying it, so I feel unfair to take it down now. But Julian Shah-Tayler, Taylor with an E. So JulianShahTayler.com. And then you have all the links. I have my, Spotify and Facebook and Instagram. I mostly do Facebook and Instagram, to be honest. I should probably do Twitter because I'm very outspoken.
Yes, you should. And I need to get back on TikTok actually. Started doing that after America's Got Talent with an
Right.
alien mask on. It just made sense. So yeah, I need to start doing that again. I've just been so incredibly busy. So thank you, for taking the time to sit down and have an interview. So I do want to do an extended little part um, to talk about the music industry. Um, so what are your thoughts right now? And we've seen a lot of changes, even just since the last time that we've met, we've seen a lot of things change, but really it's been an ongoing thing for decades now. And some people would say, oh, well, you're just from a past generation. You're not really into the cool music. But a lot of people, even younger people, when they get exposed to the older music, they get an education about another time when there
Yeah.
was a lot of incredible music that was being made.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. Something like Spotify, for example, I was rejecting the Spotify for many years. I
Me
didn't
too.
didn't take it on at all. And then I got featured on a very prominent playlist by a friend of mine who's prominent in the industry. And I just had to get on there to see what was going on. And of course, then I discovered I've got one of my songs is over 250,000 streams, which isn't a lot in context of today, but it seemed like, how did that happen? I don't know. I don't get the Spotify thing because we don't get paid.
Right, exactly.
I think I made $70 in total through all my Spotify streams forever, which must add up to 500,000 at least.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how that works.
Yeah, and it seems totally useless to have stuff, but people see it now as a shop front where you just get people interested, and it's attention that you're trying to find, and then the attention you try to get people, like for example my live streams, the Bowie live streams. I mean, obviously I have a Bowie platform, which a lot of people don't have, so I feel very blessed and honored that people don't go, you should stop doing Bowie because you're awful, because apparently I'm not awful.
Oh, you're not. You're wonderful.
Thank you. But using that, I get tips. People are prepared and happy to give me tips, but it's getting their attention for them to come and be interested in being a part of that experience, and that's really important. So Spotify, stuff like that, is about bringing attention, and then we have to learn as artists to monetize that attention, and whether that be selling t-shirts. Now, of course, nobody needs t-shirts because you can buy 50 t-shirts at
Right.
$2 each, wherever. But what they're trying to do, what we have to learn to do, Dan, in my opinion, is monetize aspects of what we do and understand that people who support us and love and believe in what we do and the brand that we have to create nowadays as a musical entity, they will support us in the sort of patron way. Like, if I remember when I was a kid, I bought every single Cure single, every single Cure album, the 12-inch singles, the re-releases, everything. I would support the Cure because they were the Cure and I loved them. And I had an opportunity to spend money on their vinyl record or their cassette. And so I would put that money down happily. And even so recently as Radiohead, when Radiohead released an $80 vinyl package with a attached, newspaper that I never opened, but I got the CD and it's an extra CD. So I paid my $80 for this new Radiohead product. And it's because they're Radiohead and it's because I love them. So
Exactly.
we have to foster a deep relationship, a love relationship with all the people who appreciate our music. And I've been very blessed in the sense that I have a backdoor to that through Bowie and through Depeche Mode, because the tributes that I am part of represent Bowie fans and Depeche Mode fans. So those people know that I am a Bowie and a Depeche Mode fan, and I love the same things they love. So when they listen to my music, they immediately assume they're not going to hate it and that they will like it. And it makes them interested in me. So it's the attention that I've grabbed first. And it's the attention that you I hate to say monetize, because makes me sound Machiavellian about it.
Yeah, I hear you. But there's a lot of truth in that, though. I mean, you're speaking a lot of truth. Something that artists have to wrangle with.
Well, if it wants to be a career, Dan, you have to make it pay money to you.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you're like I am. It's like, I just want to be an artist. I want to make music on my terms, and that's all I want to do all of the time. I don't want to think about marketing plans. I don't want to think about how to make these people pay me money for what it is. I'm blessed and honored and thrilled when somebody enjoys my song. Of course, every time. It's like if somebody says, I love that song, that gives me more than $100 or $500 or whatever it is, but I need to live. I need to survive. It's a music industry, as you said. It isn't just for fun. And if you need to, I live through music. This is all I do. I produce, I remix, I write, I tribute, tour, and I've given my entire life for that. So I need money for it, and I need to be more pragmatic and practical about how that happens. And it's not about t-shirt sales or CD sales. It's about communicating and really, having people that love what you do and support you.
And think outside the box.
Exactly.
Which has changed because of Spotify and a lot of different online aggregates. So I also realized that we have, besides Bowie, we also have another person in common, Robert Margouleff, the producer.
That's right.
He's been on the Nowman show talking about mostly Stevie Wonder. I tried to get him to talk more about Devo, but we did talk about that a little bit, but mostly Stevie Wonder and the synthesizer. He's a pioneer.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy to work with. It's funny, we didn't do much synth work at all. I did one song with him with David J, actually.
Wow.
Brought him in to produce one of those that we did together. We have done very little synth stuff, actually. Robert's contributions as co-producer of the stuff we did together were not synth related, honestly.
Really? Wow.
Weirdly, yeah. It was mostly guitar direction and sonic sculpting, but not with synths necessarily, which I was surprised by, honestly, but not a problem at all.
Yeah, he's got quite a repertoire. I mean, he's worked with Joan Baez, Guar, Oingo Boingo.
Guar? Did he do a Guar record?
Yeah, he's got a lot of diversity.
Oh, he's a brilliant musician. Like
Yeah.
he's classically trained. I was classically trained. We related a lot to, that background in choral music and
Yeah.
classical music. I felt a great synonymity with him, and he really wants to work again with me. I will not work with him until I can afford him, because I feel he's one of the greatest there is, and I want to pay him properly. Honestly, I feel that that's only fair, because this is what I'm a music producer, and I need people to pay me. So I'm not going to, cut deals for the back end or anything like that, because realistically, as we were talking earlier, Spotify doesn't necessarily throw a lot of back end at us.
That's true. Well, that's kind of how the system is set up, whether we like it or not. So
Right.
we have to. I don't like the word compromise. That's because I don't believe that word. Um, but we have to work around what we can. And some of us are obviously ethical, and we won't do anything just to be doing it.
Right.
So there is that balance. You know, and you're right. We have to take the business side of this much more seriously, especially nowadays, I think, because it does require thinking more outside the box. um, and there's also, I think, for me as an educator as well, as a producer of different kinds, it's important to create content for the younger generations as well, to understand that there was a period of time before they were on this planet, that, and not that long ago, where there were incredible, people call them music invasions, that just to change the world, much like, you know, the classical musicians of that period changed the world.
Right. Shostakovich and Scriabin, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's or Beethoven, even,
Oh,
Wagner. These
oh,
these big bombastic.
Chopin and Liszt, and just the list goes on, for me. Just sorry. Um, but and Liszt, also too was one of the first, of his kind as a
Rock,
performer.
he's a rock star.
He was a rock star. He was one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, to turn the piano sideways so the women could see his profile while he was playing.
Right.
And that was, totally different, because most of the time, the keyboard player, just played a very docile kind of role, and the music was the star, right?
Right.
And that changed. I think Amadeus was a great film to also educate people about, how some things maybe haven't changed when it comes to comparing excellence with mediocrity, because I think there is a lot of that. There always has been. I mean, even as a kid, there was pop music that sometimes made it on the radio that I thought was kind of mediocre. I mean, it may have had maybe a catchy little tune, um, but it really, in comparison to the other recordings, other artists, it couldn't stand up to that, in my experience.
A very interesting anecdote is I had a bet with my friend. The stake was a concert ticket, right? And then we were very poor. We were in university. No, sorry, I just finished university. Went down to London, and we were living in this hovel, terrible place. And I was living with the bass player in my band, and I bet him a concert ticket to see this band that they would not reach number one. And the band that reached number one and kept them off the number one spot was Hanson. And
Really?
the song that was kept off the number one spot by Mbop by Hanson was Paranoid Android by Radiohead.
Really?
That's the difference between mediocrity and greatness. And so Paranoid Android, one of the greatest songs of all time, on the most lauded album of all time, that's number one on every single list you ever see, OK Computer, did not reach number one because Mbop by Hanson kept them off the number one spot.
Wow.
I mean,
I know. And see,
I'm sorry, I miss Hanson very dearly. I wish they'd tour again.
Bop to that. Yeah, I'm sure they're nice people. See, that's the thing is that, I've there's a lot of nice people out there,
Mhm.
and they're very talented. They do understand how to, at least the basics, which is important. Mike Garson, I talked about how, even in avant-garde music, you can't just sit down an instrument and just make noises. There really is an art to it. You really have to understand the basics.
Right.
Even when you make noise, so to speak, like Sonic Youth or whatever, you have to understand that, right? And so, and obviously, some people are more trained than others. I come from a background of combination of experimental and the music theory, in the traditional sense, both. So I'm a slow reader, but I can read very, very slowly. But I just felt that, when I was in school, my teacher said to me, "You really don't want to learn how Mozart created music, do you?" I'm like, "No, not really. I want to understand how I love Mozart, but I want to understand how I can do this for
Sure.
me,
Sure.
you know."
You're a
And
punk. You're punk rock.
yeah, that's basically what it is. But it a lot of times punk rock doesn't you get associated with sophistication. But I remember Steve Jones saying once on his show that he would play Tony Bennett and he'd get flack for it, on his show, and he basically would say, "Well, I'm a punk rocker and I can't like Tony Bennett. Doesn't make any sense,
I
We're
mean,
musicians."
listen to the Buzzcocks. Listen to the Buzzcocks and the Stranglers. They're punk rock,
Right,
but they have very very great sophistication. I mean, even Depeche Mode. I mean, it's punk. It's punk electronic music. Their punk aesthetic
right.
applies to complexity and beautiful nature. It's like punk rock is the aesthetic is not about being bad at your instrument. It is about using the instrument to convey something that is not conventional,
That's right.
as the fashion is. Like, just because you have a safety pin through your nose does not make you a punk. You can
That's
be
right.
an idiot, a moron. You can be a complete misogynist, racist, and wear a safety pin. Doesn't not make you a punk rocker because you're missing the point and all those things. I love John Lydon is a divisive figure. He
Yeah.
a lot of commentary on what being punk is,
Yes.
and the punk ideology and the punk ideas that came out of the Malcolm McLaren plan and all that sort of stuff is based around. It's a very philosophical and intellectual approach that was then adopted by fashion brands. And as soon as you get punk being a fashion thing, like on the cover of Vogue, these punks, they dress up these very conventional looking people in conventional unconventionality, and it's then you've lost the spirit of it completely. And the spirit is about owning your own narrative outside of convention. And I'm not a punk rocker in sound or sonics in any sense. I'm very trained musically, but my aesthetic psychologically could be seen as punk. I don't want to fit a box. I don't want to be pigeonholed in any way, and I feel like
Totally.
that's like what you were saying about Margouleff. Margouleff is a punk producer, and he's worked with some punk bands, but Stevie Wonder is about as far from punk as you can imagine.
And Joan Baez, yeah.
Joan Baez, absolutely. But Margouleff did a Gua record. You just told me something I didn't know. That's pretty
Yeah.
punk rock.
That's pretty punk rock. Don Randy I had on the show, who was one of the Wrecking Crew pianists. I went through his list of credits and I saw the Tubes, and I brought that up in the interview, and he mentioned he's just kind of smiled real big, like and so there's that. The Wrecking Crew guys really kind of had, in my view, had this kind of punk rock vibe to them, where they were rebellious because they were coming in, even though they knew how to read music and they were very talented, and just like their predecessors were in the big band era that were starting to, people like Barney Kessel that were starting to leave the industry, at least the studio recording industry for other artists, they were the new kids, right, coming in.
Sure.
And they definitely had a punk rock, kind of what we would now call a punk rock mentality. And some of those stories, from people that, that Denny had talked to, plus Don Randy himself told me, like hilarious, right? Very, um, very rebellious, I should say. You're going
And
against the norm, and they created incredible music at a time when bands had to be focusing on getting their marketing strategy together, getting their live acts together, and they didn't always have time. Like in the case of the Beach Boys, they didn't have time to get all the other guy. Brian Wilson didn't have time to get all the other guys up to speed, right?
right.
So he had to immediately reach out to these guys in the studio. And that was such an incredible story, and I'm so glad that I got to experience that story firsthand, with some people.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Brian Wilson was very punk rock, even though his music is incredibly easy listening.
let's wrap this up. And again, Julian, it was great to be able to talk to you again, and thank you so much for opening up the time.
Dude,
And
I'm sorry we're not in the office where Bukowski wrote his books.
I know that's where Kill Radio was, the internet radio show, last time we were together. So let's try to continue this conversation, and maybe in person. And again, thank you so much, Julian Shah-Tayler. And this is Dan Nowman Niswander, and you're watching the Nowman Show. And always remember, stay present in the moment now.